Imagine a nation that is afraid to adopt a constitution just for the purpose of not acknowledging the Palestinian as part of the state or other human beings. So if you go to Israel, Israel is an ethno state. It is a Jewish supremacist state. But God forbid here in the United States, if a white person say, well, I'm white and I love my country and I don't want to be a minority. Oh, he's a white supremacist. Ban him from platform. Let's ban him from YouTube. Let's ban him from everywhere. Let's ban him from no more money. PayPal. He's a white racist. Because I feel sorry for white people in America. Fucking the white male. Chase him around. Chase him around.
And as a Christian, to feel that you have a role in the world to play. And part of the Jewish role that we believe is in terms of bringing godliness into the world. Like, these are values that I would think you would also stand by and advocate for. And everybody, in other words, the fact that you think Christianity everyone should be, like, it doesn't bother me that you believe that. In a world that we can respect each other's differences and we have we are a tolerant society, like, you can believe that, and as long as you're not forcing me to do anything, like, I think that's great. And I can believe,
I think everyone should be, I think everybody should be a conservative.
In dignity and difference.
I believe everyone should be a conservative, a free market capitalist. Here are my reasons why. But
there are better ideas. So there's supremacists in terms of the word supremacy is what I'm really objecting to when you use that word, because it is such a loaded term in terms of I think it's just a misnomer for the situation to believe that you have a role to play, that you're proud of coming from a common culture and a common people that has contributed in a lot of ways, and even Christianity and Judaism have a shared history, and that's a beautiful thing. So
they killed Jesus.
I reject that use of that language. I don't think it's helpful, and
that's
I think
history right there.
I think people just shouldn't be Jew supremacists, right? So it's like saying, like, I reject the idea. Are there white supremacists? Yes. Are the majority of people white supremacists? No. Are there black supremacists? Yes. We saw that a lot during BLM, especially. They were making demands that were absolutely insane, and there was a lower value placed on white life. Does every black person a black supremacist? No, but you have to call it out when you see it, right?
But is everyone who criticizes you a Jewish supremacist?
If you don't have the courage to call it out. And unfortunately, I think any person objectively listening to the conversation between me and Rabbi Barclay would reasonably acknowledge that he is a supremacist. Now, I don't find that to be problematic because what he says does not become law. You know what I mean? It's not like he says this and suddenly it's law and his perspective prevails today. No, and because I know the majority of my Jewish friends don't think like that. So that's why I clown on him even harder, because it's like you are actually not representative of the Jewish community. You kind of lost the plot. No more than Rabbi Shmuley is representative of the Jewish community. I went after these people not because they were representative of the Jewish community, but because they were attacking me. That was it. That was the only reason, and which is why
But I want to. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. On the Barclay conversation, there was one moment that came up that I think really needs clarification, and it was your discussion on the definition of anti-Semitism. And I know you objected to this idea that, I guess it could just be anything I say. And you see a lot of bad actors on Twitter and online talking about how, I guess, just speaking truth is anti-Semitic, which is...
Well, Rabbi Barclay said that anti-Semitism is not one single thing or one thing that is set on a foundation of things or actions. He said it mutates. So in other words, I could just call anything anti-Semitism whenever I want. If you go to that interview, Candace Owen was not having it. You can't just make shit up as you go. You understand?
There is a catch-22, as I mentioned earlier, about when somebody says something incendiary and you call it out as anti-Semitic, all of a sudden that feeds into the notion that Jews are somehow controlling speech. But the point is, the definition of anti-Semitism doesn't change. It is always fixed as the, call it what you want, Jew hatred, hating Jews and being hostile to Jews, wishing them harm. We understand each other. Anti-Semitism means that.
Well, no, it doesn't mean
racial
that.
Bias.
Anti-Semitism does not just imply Jews, right? It's anti-Semitic to say things against Palestinians as well. Anti-Semitic to say things against Arabs.
This is semantics.
That's not semantics. They are Semites.
In the current vernacular, when we say anti-Semitism, we're talking about Jews. But for the sake of argument, Jew hatred. Let's call it Jew hatred. Okay? Because yes, there are Semitic peoples, and academically it's understood that there are different Semitic peoples. In today's current language, in the vernacular, when we talk about anti-Semitism, we're talking about Jews. But let's just say Jew hatred for the sake of argument, for the conversation. It's not that the definition of Jew hatred changes and evolves and is a shape-shifting definition. The it's the reasons and causes of anti-Semitism change throughout time. There are so many different sources of it throughout history of hatred towards Jews, whether it's theological, in the early days of Crusades, or Islamic, having to do with hostility towards Jews. There's a theological component to it, economic and social and racial, as we see from Nazi Germany deeming Jews as this other race, this dirty race polluting our people, and we need to cleanse our society of these dirty Jews. This notion that some of the narratives you hear on the far right that Jews are somehow co-opting this sort of they're controlling our government, they're cabals, they're behind the scenes. The left-wing anti-Semitism, which is that the Jews are the capitalists and the exploiters, and whenever we see wealth and power, we presume it must be exploitative. And who's at the top of the wealth and power, and who has all that? It's the Jews.
Well, let me ask you
let's be clear. Jews are very successful. They are on the highest in the economic ladder. They are very, very well in the United States. A lot of billionaires are Jews, a lot of millionaires are Jews, a lot of companies are controlled by Jews, American Jews. Congratulations to them. So the whole idea is not far-fetched that there is some form of success. You know, you could call it whatever you want, but people see what it is. Because if you look at the biggest companies, I mean, come on, man. Let's not be silly.
Anti-Zionism against Israel. So it just comes from different places, but we end at the same place.
There is definitively people that hate Jews. There's no question about that. There's obviously
but I just wanted to clarify what that means.
And the problem, I think, is that too many people are being thrown into this camp of people who hate Jews, and it's just not real. Like I'm not afraid to offend a Jew. That's that whatever that is, whatever word you got to give that. I'm not afraid to call out Jewish people when they're behaving badly. Okay, and that is offensive to some people who think that there's some special category. It doesn't exist in my head or anywhere else. So they just get offended when I say this was a bad person who was Jewish. So let me ask you a question. What have Jewish people done bad in human history?
What have Jewish people done bad as a whole?
Yeah, because and don't say like you can't say as a whole, because we just had a whole conversation about like, you know, Palestinians. We can say blah, 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 blah. So, and I'm not saying this in a way as like we need to assign collective guilt. I'm just saying, have Jewish people ever done anything bad throughout human history?
Jewish individuals certainly have done bad things. You cannot ascribe malice to entire groups of people. That's racist.
Okay, so you would agree then that saying like the Germans is not the right thing to do, the Palestinians, this would equally be as wrong to say the Germans, the Palestinians, any sort of that rhetoric would be completely wrong based on your...
It's low, and it's low resolution. It's low resolution. Okay. If we're being specific and precise in our speech, you know how I feel about Jordan Peterson. Precise, you know, being precise in our speech. We are talking about the Nazi regime of Germany. We're not talking about the Germans that brought pianos over to the United States. Not the same people.
Yeah, okay, because a lot of times you will see that they're very comfortable kind of assigning collective guilt when you go backwards and you're like, this was done to the Jews by these people and these people and these people. And I'm like, okay, but then suddenly like let's get real specific if you're talking about a bad Jewish individual. Yes, of course. And so it doesn't...
No, but you can historically trace anti-Semitism.
It would go a very long way
regimes.
if Jewish people would stop defending bad Jewish individuals. It would go a very long way. That's why I say it's like beyond bonkers to me that someone would defend Magnus Hirschfeld. Like, what is the purpose of that? Like, literally, why do you feel like we have to defend this weird pervert?
We're some of the most self-critical, self-reflective people. We argue all the time. We call out people amongst ourselves. I agree with you about not having tribal allegiances and looking past morality and decency because of any sort of blind tribal allegiance. We have to avoid that. Just like I wouldn't ascribe collective guilt and group identity as paramount above all things.
If someone says oh, there could be a Jewish gang, you're not in it, so who cares? There could be a black gang on the south side of Chicago. I'm not gonna be like, well, be careful. Be careful when you're talking about Suge Knight and the things that he did in the past. Be careful. I'm just like, there's definitely Jewish gangs. There's definitely black gangs. There's Hispanic gangs. And I don't need to be all sensitive about it because I'm not in them. That's it. And I think if you guys employed that perspective of not having to defend the plausibility of a bad person, then it would go a very long way. Just don't defend bad Jewish people because you're not them.
I'm going to be honest here. She's right. I mean, you cannot, when you criticize a Jewish individual, let me give you a great example. Jerry Seinfeld, he's a comedian. He's been a comedian for 25 years or 30 years. We know him from the Seinfeld show. And he's not a funny guy. He's not a funny comedian. I never laughed. Even in his show, he was the weakest character. But right now he has a relationship with the IDF, and the West Bank settlements. So when he went on some of these shows, a lot of people disturbed like, booed or talked to him against the war in Israel. Instead of saying, well, these people are upset at me because of my action or my behavior with the IDF or toward the Palestinians, or my position as he could instead of saying it is, he blamed it that it is because he's a Jewish comedian. That is the most F up shit I ever heard. Like, we don't know you was Jewish for 25 years, Seinfeld? Hi, Jerry, you think we don't know who you are? You think we were watching the show like idiots? Oh, these are 5 Jewish guy people in the east side of New York. It's about a show about nothing. It is disgusting how sometimes people use anti-Semitism as a way to explain their behavior or the protest of their behavior toward a certain cause or issue. Nobody booed Seinfeld or disturbed his show because he's Jewish. You saw his pictures with the IDF and his statements after October 7. The man, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He used to take his children to summer camp in the West Bank on land that is stolen according to Israeli and even international law. So he's a piece of shit. That's what it is. You cannot go, well, they hate the Jews now. They hate us. No, I don't like what you're doing. You as an individual.
It's not collective.
Right, but the context of what we're saying matters too.